Hey, happy Tuesday, everybody. If you are on here, please get those likes up. Tag anybody on this discussion, share with anybody who you think may find it interesting. I'm here to listen to you guys today. I'm pretty excited about tonight's topic, but I think I'm going to put in my listening ears, and this is more going to be an interactive style. So actually, before I forget, let me put this out here real quick because I am going to want to hear your guys' perspective. I shared this post maybe about a week ago and got a pretty I got a pretty big response. And usually when I see a really big response go through, I feel like it's good to follow up with like a live or to have a discussion, because and that means that's something that's worth addressing. So yeah, I'm gonna drop this link, y'all. But because I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from you guys. So here is the link. And we can begin the conversation in a few minutes. But just really quickly before we get into that topic, I want to go over what we discussed. It was about a week ago, right? And I came across this post, and basically the whole premise of the post was, guys who are over 40 without kids, not married, they're not winning, really. They're not winning. And I'm going to share it with you guys because I want to read it for you word for word, and then we can go over some of the comments and then get right into it. And, the reason that I even got into this whole topic was because I was having a conversation with like my husband maybe a week or two ago, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but he'd made reference to the point where he'd seen a woman online who had basically said that. He's like, yeah, these guys who are this, and that, like, if they are 40, if they they don't make significant income, if they have no kids, they're not married, they're not respected. They're not a part of the conversation. And I'm listening to him, and I'm just like, yeah, honestly, if I'm just being honest, most women out there, they're looking at men and they're like, okay, if you're at a certain age and you're not married, The only way that's going to be okay is if, you got something. If, you have money in the bank, you have assets, you have something to show for it. But, if you're 40 plus, no kids, no marriage, like your typical, and again, I'm not going to speak for all women, but many women that I know, even if they don't say it internally, they're thinking, okay, there's something, what's wrong with that guy? Is he not wanting to settle down? Is he not wanting to marry? And like I said, the only way around it is if that guy has spent maybe those 30, 40 years building himself. He has maybe a successful business. He has a lot of assets. He has money to show for it. But other than that, if that's not the case, you are nowhere in the conversation. And I remember going back and forth and kind of having that discussion. And I was like, I'm not saying this is right, but this is a general talking point. If I'm just being honest, like this is how a lot of women think. They're looking at dudes and it's like, past a certain age, if you ain't got A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, it's like you're not even considered in the conversation. Like you're not relevant. So we were having a conversation and then we came across this post. And so we shared it on the community tab. And like I said, that's where I got all this feedback. And I was like, y'all, we've got to talk about this. So let me bring this up. If you're on here, yes, please get those likes up. Also, I appreciate all of you guys who have shown support and continue to show support. And if you'd like to do that, you can find me on CASHAPP or VENMO, ChezCharde. So let me pull this up really quickly. Yeah, I see you're speaking facts. Right. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of women out there are just like, stop with it. Like you are no longer relevant. And the only way around that is if you have assets or something to show for it. Otherwise, they're looking at you like, bruh, like you just don't want to commit. You just flat out don't want to commit. So let me see if I can pull. Okay, because I'm going to show this tab. So some of you guys may have actually seen this, but I wanted to go over it again because this is where I started to see the comments just blowing up, right? So I posted this 8 days ago. It said, shout out to Submissive Goddess. This was on her vlog. She shared. It says, this is an interesting topic because it speaks to how most women feel about men. A man that is over 40 with no kids, no wife, and no significant income will be considered a failure. This gets worse when these type of men post red pill content revealing the trauma that they have from past relationships. Most women will not take these men seriously. Do you think the success of the manosphere is based upon more men having successful life outcomes? Let me know. So that was the whole premise. And then if you actually see the post she shared, it said, I promise it's okay to stand alone. You don't need the red pack to be a man. Seek help and heal so you can move forward to finding your queen. Being 45 and a red pill, no kids, no wife isn't an accomplishment. Heart. So, like I said, this, I shared this and then I seen some of the comments come through. I'm just going to read a few. I'm going to read a few of them. Because I thought it was really interesting. Actually, anything to discredit the manosphere. Some people weren't feeling it. It says another female goddess that has learned RP language and is not using it to shame men. Yada, yada, yada. I see that this is about shaming integrity, shame on you for valuing your standard. You should do what they think Black men do. And that is to be the worst part of yourself so that they can be right about why they are divesting or have a lack of interest in Black men. I see a man can mind his own business if he wants. He doesn't have to run it by her or anyone else. I mean, I've seen the comments. I'm seeing a lot of different comments come through. But at the end of the day, people were, there was a lot of heat. There was a lot of heat there. And from what I saw personally is there was an overwhelming response of people who were just like, well, no, there was two camps. There was one that was just like, no, like just because a dude isn't maybe married by like 40 or 45 doesn't mean he's a failure, right? It doesn't mean that he's discounted, like he has standards. So you have that. And then you got other people who are just like, no, at the end of the day, you just don't want to commit. I don't care how you put it. I don't care what flowery language. You just don't want to commit. So I want to give a shout out to those who are sending the super chat. Shout out to Hakeem for the $10 on the super chat. Also shout out to is that no? Okay, I don't want to butcher that name, but I appreciate it. I'm gonna pull it up. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Listen, okay, let me see. They you to say the same thing about dudes in their 30s, especially if you don't have kids. They used to say the same thing about dudes in their 40s. So it sounds like you're saying they're moving the goalposts. But like I said, y'all check it out if you really want to get deep into the comments, because there is a whole bunch of different back and forth. But I really thought this warranted a conversation, because the reality is many of you guys know, I think it's like over 50% of Black men are single and childless. So, and I'm sure that the age of that ranges, but there is a significant group of men, especially Black men, who may very well find themselves in this position of being, single, unmarried, no kids, past 40. That's the position they're in. And does that mean, okay, if you find yourself in that position, you are a failure as a man? You are a failure as a Black man if you have not, you know, basically married a woman, or you have not decided to, spend your life with a woman? Are you a failure? Because like I said, again, this is actually the reality of what is going on and happening right now. It's interesting. I wanted to read this one passage. I was reading a book for my husband a few days ago. This is a marriage book. And one of the first things in the chapter, I'm going to read it because it stood out to me. One of the first things in there is he's basically making this argument that, like, it's not good for man to be alone, right? Many of you guys who are familiar with the biblical narrative, there's that passage where we talk about, like, hey, it's not good for man to be alone. That's why I'm going to make Eve, so she can be a help meet, right? Actually be of help. That's a whole different conversation, but be a help meet. That was, that's where Eve came along. So he was making reference to that passage, and then in it he adds, men need women. Men need women. It says, we're not much good without them. In fact, research shows that a 48-year-old married man has a 90% chance of reaching the age of 65. But a 48-year-old single man has only a 60% chance of reaching that age. So basically, again, let me recap. So according to the research here, and in the back, I think is where they actually have the different studies. But according to the research here, a 48-year-old man who was married has a 90% chance of living past the age of 65, whereas a man who's 48 and is not married, their chance, I think, is 60%. So it's like 30% less of actually living up to the age 65. So that was just one passage where he's arguing, hey, this is why it's important. And men and women need each other. There's an actual health benefit to having a long-term marriage. Now, of course, we're talking about long-term healthy relationships in marriage. The wrong one can drain you. But assuming, this is a functional, healthy relationship, there are benefits that can actually impact your health. So like I said, that's something I just came across just a few days ago, and I thought it was really interesting. And I thought it would tie nicely into this topic. So I want to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen, both of you guys, because I think this is a discussion that I think both of you guys should weigh in. And the reality is, the women are looking at it a certain way, men are looking at it a certain way, and I think it's good to talk about it. So I'm going to bring on, I see some of you guys are calling in. I'm also going to show the link here, so you guys, if you guys have it, if you want to continue. Let me see. Also, I also want to share this story real quick, because there's a few things on this, but while I'm pulling up the link again. So there's a good friend of mine, good friend of mine. He had an unfortunate situation, rough childhood. Make a long story short, got locked up when he was like, I think 21. Stayed in prison for about 17 years. Got out at 37. I met him when he was like 37. That's around the time I met him. At 37, he got out. He was a dishwasher for a few years. He had to live at home with his mom as he was trying to get his life settled, because literally he spent pretty much all of his adult life behind bars. So he was a dishwasher, you know what I mean, taking humble jobs, just trying to figure out how to build his life. And basically fast forward now 10 years later, he has his own business. He has his own house, looking to get a new one. He has 3 kids and a wife, and is now expecting a 4th one. So within 10 years, this man was completely to literally build himself up from nothing. 37, starting his life, dishwasher, living at home with his mom, fresh out of prison, you know what I mean? Not really social media, internet, so much has happened when the time he's behind bars. Now, 10 years later, like I said, basically 4 kids, a house, a functional business, getting another house, really happy marriage. Now he's doing different things in ministry. Just a total and complete, just a total and complete turnaround in a rather short amount of time. Like he's been able to get the kind of success that you see people working their entire lives for just in these last 10 years. And I talk to him often, and we kind of joke back and forth. I'm like, man, he always working on something. You always got some plan. He's busy. He's always working. He's always working. But I look at that one situation, and I'm like, the reality is some of the things that he's been able to experience, even though it's later on in his life, he could still experience it in its fullness because he's a man. If I'm being honest, okay, 37, let's say he got married at 41, 42, 43, 45, whatever, he could still have kids at any age. And that's what he's doing. I mean, I think he's 47, going to be 48 or whatever, and having a newborn is on the way. So yeah, he got started later, but he's still been able to achieve pretty much all of the things that he wanted, all of his dreams, even though he got a later start, because just by nature of him being a man, there's certain things that there is not necessarily a time limit. And then the way women operate, let's just be honest, for women, we really want those resources, most of us. You want the resources, you want the stability. So I think even somebody like him, he got himself to a certain point where he was able to provide, he was able to get the resources, and then he was able to get the woman that he wanted, even though he started later. And so when I was, as I've been thinking about this different topic, I was thinking, okay, a 45-year-old man who's single and childless and, doesn't have kids or whatever, that's going to be different than a 45-year-old woman. Again, this is my opinion, but that's going to be different because for no other reason, we just look at biology, the fact that women are pretty much on a biological clock, right? And also the fact that men and women are attracted to different things, right? Women generally like security. A man could be butt ugly, but if he's a millionaire, if he has some money, or he's able to provide the lifestyle, she can look the other way. Now, she may be tempted to cheat with the guy she's sexually attracted to, but all in all, women are willing to get with a guy who they find unattractive if he can provide that lifestyle. A man, on the other hand, it don't matter how much money the woman is making. If she is unattractive to him, then it's just game over. Like most men are just not going to do it. So it's just like by nature, the fact that we are even attracted to different things, this means that men are on a different timeline, if you are, than women are when it comes to, I think, dating and relationships. Now, is that good? Is that bad? That's another question. Is that fair? Is it not fair? That's another question. But when I was thinking about that, story, I was like, man, he was able to achieve some of those things, but partially because he was a man. If he was a woman getting out at 37, not to say that she still couldn't have achieved beautiful things and still had a satisfying life, but the scenario may have been a little bit different. I don't know. But again, these are just my thoughts. So I do have a few callers in here. I don't want to leave y'all back here too much. So, hey there.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So, okay, what do you think on the topic? Are childless single men past 40? I mean, are they winning or is this a failure?
Well, like I did comment on that community post, and I do believe that there's literally like a one deciding factor, like you mentioned, which is whether or not they have money, whether or not their pockets are
Whether or not they have money.
exactly. So if they're 40 and single and childless and all these things, I wouldn't say you're necessarily winning if you're like, low earning, low performing, low income. When I say like income wise, I mean, like, where your next 100K is coming from, or where your next million is coming from because you've done it already. And most men meet their peak at, between 50, sometimes 40, 50 years old. They're not like women. So I do believe that if your pockets are straight, women will just come. Women are a side effect. You can build a life that you want. But if your pockets are not straight, unfortunately, like society will punish you. Women will punish you. You just will not be like living up to the standard. So I do believe that, like, if you're 40 and single and childless and your money is straight, absolutely. As a man, you are definitely winning. Yes.
So what you're saying is it's all dependent upon the money.
Yeah.
Let's forget about the other stuff. The deciding factor is whether you have money or not. That's really what's going to keep you engaged in the conversation.
Right.
As women. And I actually mentioned this a few weeks ago where I was having a panel with different women. We were talking about Kevin Samuels. And my question was like, okay, would he even be appealing to the masses if he didn't have such a good polished image? And they're all just like,
too. I also about Kevin Samuels, like I'm not like a huge Kevin Samuels like fan or follower.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah, because I really don't believe that, his image is one thing, but I don't think that he's exactly telling men like how to produce or how to be better, how to elevate. He's always like the women, the women, the women. So I'm not saying, there's both sides to every coin. And I don't know, I haven't seen like what does Kevin Samuels produce? What is he like given, what has he done aside from having a large platform? So the proof is in the pudding to me. He can say all he wants that he's like a high value, high this, high that. I don't see the fruits of that. Unfortunately, I don't. But I do believe there is some like I don't want to say some merit in like his message, but yeah, but at the same time, like I said, the deciding factor is literally are your pockets deep? The report card of your life is like how have you, produced? How have you been self-sufficient? How can you replicate that first 100,000 or first million or whatever it is that you're making? Like, can you do that? And if you're 40 and single and also doing that, then yes, more power to you. You're killing it.
Right. So like I said, it goes right down to the money. It rolls right down for the money. And now, do you believe that if the genders were swapped, say it was a single childless woman over 40, is she winning? If the genders were swapped, would your answer be the same or would it be a different answer?
Unfortunately, it'd be different. I do believe it's biology. If you're 40, childless, single, I don't think you're winning because that puts you out of the sexual marketplace. Like men are not honestly checking for you. It's a sad, unfortunate truth, but I don't believe that men are going to be looking for over 40, because then they may want kids. Like you're the guy you mentioned of 37 having his fourth child, like he may want kids. And at 40, 45, if you're a female, like that's going to look very difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible because we have medicine, but it'll be very difficult. And men want prime. They want the prime pickings. That's why you see, I think it was Marquez Houston who just married like a 21-year-old and he's 40. And like I saw like Essence was like up in arms. They're like, oh, he's like marrying a 20-year-old, and they were so mad. I'm like, you don't understand. That literally is prime picking. She is coachable. She is a clean slate. She's all these things. Like she's not,
Right.
So like unfortunately for women, like that's literally the reality of it. And I think it's a sad reality that some of us have to, come to the realization and face. So
Yeah, no, that's I think that's facts. I think that is I couldn't agree more. Now, I guess, I mean, depending on how you define winning, right? But if we're just sticking to how we define winning generally up to this point is, women being measured based upon their relationships. I know that people are trying to change that, especially in the modern era. We're trying to change that, but at least for hundreds of thousands of years, women's worth and value within a lot of different contexts was directly related to their family, their ability to maintain relationships, families, things like that. And then men, it's their ability to provide. That's pretty consistent across the board in different cultures. So if we just stick to that metric on winning, it really is different. And I think sometimes, and this is just different women that I've talked to. You tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think sometimes it's hard for us ladies to want to accept that. That a man at 40 really can restart and pretty much have everything that he may have dreamed of at 20 if his pockets are deep, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was just gonna say, like, and I think the whole like boss chick narrative thing, like, yeah, if she's 40 and millionaire and has her own business as a boss, like she's winning, right? And to me, that's not very feminine to be working so hard. It does a lot for your femininity, your mental health, all those things. Women are not meant to be grinding like that. So I mean, pressure is made for shoulders, not really for hips. It's just So I really believe that, the whole like modern women feminism, and I'm like literally a product of that too. Like I was, super modern woman, all that, and went after the degrees, the doctors, all that stuff. And
Mhm.
but luckily though, I met my husband like really early. So
That
I when
helps.
I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, like 23, I met him. So and we got married when I was like 29. So he had a very huge, huge influence in like my, growth and like how I see the world and my trajectory. And I'm so glad that I was able to get that correction because now I see my friends who are like in their 30s and like working so hard to be boss chicks and they are like exhausted. And I'm like, this is sustainable for right now, but it's not going to be sustainable for when you're like 45 or 50. You're going to be, wanting to kind of let your burdens down. So, yeah.
Well, and hats off to you for being willing to learn because you have to be willing to take feedback from
Yeah.
from him to even recognize and be like, hey, maybe there's certain things that I'm believing or operating that maybe aren't helpful. So you had to actually be at a place where you were open enough to take constructive feedback and say, hey, I can adjust. So hats off to you for even doing that because there's those of us out there who just aren't any ounce of constructive criticism, even if it's done in love, can we just can't take because we're so combative.
Yeah,
So
I think also because like I said, was earlier in age. When you're like get older, you're stuck in your ways. Like even now, it's like I'm in my 30s now. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely getting stuck in like ways. But yeah, when you're in that early age, you're coachable, and that's why men seek women that are at that age when it's time to settle down when they're ready. And I do not blame them. Even like my husband, like when I met him, I still tell him too. I'm like, I think that without me, you would have probably like your trajectory probably would have been a little like better or faster. Like I'm not even trying to say like I stunted it, but in a way, kind of, yeah, he probably would have been further along if I hadn't come along. We also have a daughter, so I'm like, if that also hadn't happened, because men literally thrive when they're like in that 40s, 50s, that age where they're just like going up. Men just get better with age, and that's literally,
well, it's interesting you say that. There's a report, and then after this, I'm gonna because I have a few of the callers, and I do appreciate you calling in. But there is, I don't know if it was a study. I have to see if I can dig it up somewhere. It was somewhere I was reading where basically it was saying that men who have families, when it comes to like careers or getting in certain higher earning positions or positions where you have to manage, men with families tend to be prioritized over bachelors. Partially because of image, you know what I mean? It's generally speaking, it's still seen as ideal. When you have a man who's running a Fortune 500 or a company or something like that, you're running big things. You want to know that he's coming for a place that's stable. And
right.
so, just from a look standpoint, this is why even if you look at politicians, some of them
Family.
who they may have crazy sexual practices, but when they come online, it's like, oh, we have this family, or they're always paired up because they want to portray this image. And so, there's still something about this culture where, at the end of the day, when it comes to certain positions of power, they like to see men sometimes having the families and the wife and the children. They like to know, okay, he's coming from a place of stability. He knows how to manage. And so I think for that, when it comes to career wise, maybe initially it may seem like it's slowing things down, but I think sometimes in the long run it can be to the person's benefit, to a man's benefit. But then again, this is just like so. This is just based upon that one study that I read. I am not an expert on this, but
No,
I think about that, and it does make sense to me.
yeah, there's something to think about. Thank you so much
So
though for letting me on.
yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks again.
Right, take care.
All right. So there we have it from one caller, that according to her, as long as a man's pocket is deep enough, then that's all it takes. So you can get started. You can get started at 40, and you work hard enough, I guess, and get as much income as is considered good enough or well enough. Then most women will give you the time of day. Um, I agree with the fact that that is how I think a lot of women are looking at it now. Is that good or valuable? That's a whole nother conversation. But as far as if that's how women are rating men in the dating and marketplace, especially past a certain age, absolutely, absolutely, it's no different. It's no different than women who are maybe young and maybe they're incredibly overweight, where men may look at the woman and be like, I don't care how sweet you are, it doesn't matter. Like you just need to get the weight off. And and sometimes I think, there's just certain things across the board, the genders where it's like it is what it is. Now, maybe that can change. Maybe we can have a conversation about should it change and how does that look like? Is that healthy? That's a whole nother thing. But by and large, what I've seen across the board is that this is how women are looking at it. But I am interested to hear from you, gentlemen. I do have a few of you guys who have called in, and I'll bring you up. Hi there.
Hello. Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Well, here's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
If a man any age is on his purpose, he's already winning.
Mm-hmm.
It comes and it really comes down to if he feels he is winning. Some
Okay.
men,
Okay.
my age, I'm 51, feels like, well, they're not winning if they're not married, and then there are some who feel like they're winning if they're not. Me personally, I feel like I'm already winning, but I would prefer, to be married.
Okay.
Also, this thing about winning, um, also, there are so many different scenarios to it.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to being married.
Right.
About why some people, my age or men my age are not married. Some may not want to get married for various reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some who do want to be married, but couldn't actually, find the person, who he envisions,
Mm-hmm.
he wants to marry.
Right.
He wants to marry.
Right.
Uh, I mean, it's so different scenarios. It could be like, what the last woman just said. It could be his pockets, but the main thing is, you know, any man, any age, especially ones who are 40 or up, is on his purpose. Just like the man who was in prison you just talked about. You know,
I'm sorry.
the man who was in prison that
Oh
you just
my. Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as soon as he got out of jail, right? Already, regardless of his past, he was on his purpose.
Yeah.
You know,
He was
yeah,
very
he was on
focused.
his purpose. He built and built. He may have scratched and clawed. To get to where he's at today. But he established himself way before he got married, and and may not be necessarily money all the time that could attract a female, but how much on his purpose he may be, just like the man you talked about. Is that what you think that is?
I see what you're saying. Where Okay, I see what you're saying because there are always exceptions, right?
Mhm.
And there is always exceptions. There are different standards that women have for different men. A man that she finds attractive, she's going to have a different standard than somebody who she does not physically find attractive. That's just out the gate. Um, but I think generally speaking, I do understand what you're saying, where it's like, even if a man maybe isn't coming with the monetary value, if he's confident and he's moving towards a goal and it seems like he is achieving the things towards those goals, then there are women out there who are like, yeah, I'm gonna ride with you because that to me that's incredibly attractive. But I think the only way that's gonna work is if there's always maybe already something about them physically that they find attractive. Like let's say maybe he's tall or he has a nice build or he has a nice face. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the only way they're gonna get around it. But I'm like, if a guy is unattractive and he's doesn't have a lot of money, even if he's not on his purpose, I don't think I hate to say this, but I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of females out there who will give him the time of day. So I think that would work. I think that would work
Yeah,
if the guy is maybe fit. Like there's something about his physical or something that maybe she finds appealing, or maybe he has swag, if that makes sense.
yeah, and that is definitely one scenario. And you've also, and I've heard this before about the differences between, you know, uh, a woman attracting a man and a man attracting a woman,
Right.
especially at my age. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you know, if I try to look for a woman that is around my age,
Yeah.
you know, it's not that many women around my age who has that sexual market value that I look for, which to me it's sad, but that's nature, unfortunately.
It happens, yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I felt, because of that, it's so hard on us because there's not very many to choose from
Hmm.
in the first place. And then we have some guys my age who like, to get with these 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds for, whatever reason, because I guess they think that, they're still, in their prime, they're still around childbearing age. And, me personally, I would feel somewhat funny if I do get with some 20, 25-year-old. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
do
hear you.
find them attractive, but it sort of feels funny to me, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But yeah, um, if a man, here's the real, to me, here's the real indicator that he's winning. If he is at peace mentally.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, yeah. If he's at peace, if he's not stressed out about anything, just as long as he keeps staying at his purpose, he won already.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I think that is spot on because um man, there's something that there's I think there's something that come to mind. There's this passage I think in the Bible that talks about living with a cantankerous woman is like it's like a dripping faucet, right? Or
Mhm.
it kind of it's making this idea where it's like if you're with somebody who is bringing constantly bringing hell your way, you'd be better off living under a rock in peace. You know what I mean?
Right.
Versus like this person that is a constant annoyance. And so I think we can. There's all these superficial standards that people use. I think within the dating market to try to navigate. But at the end of the day, every situation is individual. And I think peace does need to be prioritized towards anything. A man being at peace, even a woman being at peace, I think is incredibly, incredibly important. And I think if somebody, um, if they're like, no, this is what I was put on this earth to do, like to me that is winning. Like you living out your god-given purpose is winning. Now like I said, it just so happens that I think the nature of women being more relational, I think that it tends more often than not to be needs to be connected with a man for that to be lived out. Now no, not everyone's going to believe me, but that's just my personal opinion, that I think women as part of purpose, we express the fullness of that when we're connected to men. Whereas men, it may be a little bit different. I don't know if they have that need. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I do agree. I think peace at the end of the day is really that's the highest. That's the highest I think priority when it comes to navigating, even when it comes to seeking relationships.
Right. Um, and if I look for somebody in your your specific person, if I'm at peace, that other person has to respect that peace
Yeah.
and help him, be at peace. And if not, I mean, that's a red flag. That's a problem.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Okay, at any age, that's the main thing.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, anytime we're in a relationship, there is going to be a level of, there's going to be a level of conflict to be expected. Like that's even in friendships, but within reason. I don't think it has to be like a struggle situation where it's like it's just toxic. There's a difference between okay, this is a healthy, functional relationship, and we're going through maybe a healthy disagreement versus now this is just toxic and too much.
Mhm.
So. But
Yeah.
yeah, well, I do appreciate you calling in. I have a few other calls I want to get to, but I do appreciate you calling in and sharing your perspective.
I
Always,
appreciate you having me.
yeah, always.
All right. Thank you.
So, I think he makes a really, really, really good point where, we can go and judge all we want and say, oh, well, if he's not making this amount of money or if she doesn't have maybe this amount of kids or whatever, then maybe then they don't have they don't have value, they're not winning. But as he put it before, I think, you know, a man who is at peace on his purpose, if he's doing and living what God told him to do, then that's me personally. I think that is winning. You living out your God-given purpose, to me, is winning. And then when you're doing that, then all those things I think tend to kind of fall into place a little bit more easily anyways. But you know, like I said, we live in a world, we live in a society where people they're very much judged based upon these, you know, these superficial things. So a man at a certain age is going to be, who doesn't have certain things, is going to be perceived a certain way. A woman at a certain age who doesn't have certain things is going to be perceived a certain way. Now, whether or not they are winning, I think that's really going to be an individual thing for him or her. But it's just interesting, I think, to have these conversations and to see kind of how people are feeling about this. Let me see. Okay. Hey, Hakeem.
Hey, Chardé, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So I'm not 40 plus, so I don't know if I should drop out of this because
it's okay.
Or if you want me to.
It's all good. You can.
So yeah, so I'm 35. I just turned 35 a couple months ago. But I think when it comes down to it, you asked a good question about, you know, what defined as winning. And definitely it would come down to your resources and your debt to equity ratio. I think you can make a decent amount of money, maybe if we're talking 6 figures plus, but if you're in debt, I wouldn't really call that winning. So I think also accumulation of assets where, you know, if you're judging a man and you're looking at what he's accumulated up to that point, you're expecting to have a house along with other, you know, resources and assets, maybe stock, definitely 401k, other things that accumulated that shows that he's ready to start a family. But yeah, that's I guess what I would see it as. But then to also play devil's advocate as well, I think there could be other reasons why one doesn't choose to get married as well, just because they may look at things such as, you know, are there enough people out there to get married to, one, and maybe just I think sometimes one may look at, you know, the divorce rates and things like that, you know, show that, okay, they may see that as a hindrance as well. So I think it just all depends on its intent as well, because just because you're making good money and then you're over that age, is that man still is that man looking to get married, or are they just trying to have fun? I think if you're looking at it from a woman's standpoint, which I can't speak to, but I would definitely say that you can just tell just by you know, looking at the person and what they, like I said, what they've accumulated over the lifespan of up to that point, to see and gauge if they're ready or not. But from the man's standpoint, like I said, I'm not over 40, but I'm close to it. I just think then it's just a matter of if you're ready, and then if you're ready, then, you know, you start the process, which it seems like nowadays, wouldn't you say that everyone's looking online?
Okay, and when you're saying looking online, you're referring to what, for relationships?
Yeah, relationships, or building something to get, or maybe, you know, finding something to eventually lead towards marriage, perhaps.
You know, a lot of people, I mean, I think especially in younger, you know, generations, it's like dating is almost dead, non-existent. Like, I mean, and then COVID didn't help, you know, and so I think many more of the things that we need, just even from a day-to-day standpoint, are starting online, including dating, including people, you know, looking for a life partner, a husband, a wife. So, yeah.
Yeah, because even for myself, I also, you know, before turning 35, I did get married as well. Myself recently, I did it the hard way, but I must say that, yeah, and the reason I asked that is because I think I looked up a stat, and I think nowadays it's like 75% of people found their husbands or wives online.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
And that may be, and then again, that may be slightly skewed or high, you know, depending on what source you get it from. But in thinking about it, in the Me Too era and just with things going on, I don't think people are doing the cold approach anymore.
Oh, no. I think I did actually another video about this where I was talking about how, you know, women aren't worth approaching anymore, and here's why. And I kind of went into why a lot of men are finding it, rightly so, are just frankly, when they're weighing like the cost to benefit analysis, and they're just like, they're just like, this is a bad deal. Me maybe approaching this woman, and this could happen, that could happen, that could happen, that could happen. They're just like, it's a bad deal. And especially if, you see a woman that you think is beautiful, but she has a really closed off face, or, you hear certain Black women being like, oh, I don't smile to dudes because I don't want them to get the wrong impression, or all these like weird reasons that we as women feel like we can't even be nice, or we can't smile, or unless it's going to give off the wrong impression. So if you're a guy going out there, you see a pretty woman, but she has a mean mugging face, and you're like, is she above my league? What if I say something to her? She's upset. Now she, accuses me of something. Now I could be put at risk. And then especially if you're a Black man and you're accused of really anything, that could be your career. That could be, work. Like, there's just so many different risks now that men, I think, are having to think about that 20, 30, 40 years ago wasn't even a thought, a factor. And so that, I think, it is a real thing. And I've seen different women talk about, oh, men aren't approaching me anymore. Like, even when I go out, look so beautiful, this and that. And I'm like, it's because a lot of these dudes are just straight up afraid. And unless you are maybe really nice and you're smiling and you're making it pretty evident you want to be approached, they're just not going to do it. They're just like, no, I don't want to get in trouble. So I think that's a real thing. At least that's just my perspective. Let me know if I'm wrong on my analysis, but that's just my understanding.
No, and think about this too. Kevin Samuels, I do listen to him quite a bit. I may not agree with everything, but I think for the majority, I think I like the exposure he's bringing to a specific sector. But when he tells women on there all the time, he tells them, if you were smart, you really should be looking at people while you're going to college.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then when you're you just nailed it. When you're in the professional setting, that's not really a good place to find your husband or wife, especially from a man's standpoint.
Yeah.
But if you start from college, we've already nailed the income standpoint, because they already, look down on men because they're not going to be making income at that point. So it's a double-edged sword, because for women, that's the idea. But as a man, you hear this saying all the time, I don't want to build a boo,
there's never been something like in what era, in what time frame, certainly in America, was it just handed to women? Unless you were like Miss Anne, literally, like I'm thinking of Miss Anne syndrome, where it was like the rich right daughter of the plantation owner. But I'm like, apart from that, in what scenario, in what family structure has there ever been a woman where it's just handed to her? Like, it doesn't exist. I'm like, I've really thought about that idea of like, oh, I don't want to build a boom. Like, you mean you don't want to work together with a man? You don't want to like be a normal person, because that's what your mom did and your grandmother did and your aunts and different generations. And we're talking across the board. This isn't just like Black women. This is like, white, Asian, Hispanic. Like, they work with their men, and then as the men progressed and moved forward, and moved in their careers, then they kind of like that's just how life works. So I don't understand that concept of like, I don't want to build a boo. I'm like, okay, then you want to date somebody 20, 30 years your senior, because that's the only way you're going to bypass that process. Right. So yeah, that's just, I've never understood it, but I think, I think you're making a good point. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. You're basically saying that, winning, you got to look at the debt to income ratio, period. You can be making $100,000 a year, but if you're in $1 million in debt and you can't even afford a home or a condo because you have trash credit and your car is being repossessed, then you're not winning. I just want to make sure I'm understanding your point.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I think those points need to be looked at, because I think sometimes income is just thrown around, and you could hear there's some men that can make $80K a year, well invested, has assets, and then the $100K guy is just living in a bachelor's pad, in the downtown of their city, but then they have no asset to speak of, and their paycheck is living to pay debt. So I think those need to be that also is kind of in the factor besides the income, but correct.
That makes sense. All right, well, I do appreciate you calling in and sharing. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
All right. No problem. Thanks as always for having me, Chardé. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. All right. So there we have it. Winning. When you're defining winning, you should look at the debt to income ratio, or as he put it, that's his position, which actually it does make sense because, you know, he makes a good point where now I think it's popular to just use, you know, $100,000 or six figures as a metric. I'm going to say out here in the Bay Area where I live, if you're making $100,000 and you have a family of like four, you're considered low income. Like you're at the poverty line out in the Bay Area. So $100,000 is like not getting, that's pretty much $100,000 is what maybe a single professional woman should be making to live comfortably. Right? Or a single professional man to live comfortably. Like you're not like broke, you know what I mean? Like on food stamps or whatever, or you know, facing eviction. You're also not rich. That's just like, okay, I'm living. That is the cost, like the cost of living for like a single person in the Bay Area. It's like, yeah, it's just $100,000. Anything less than that is like it's a struggle bus. So I hear that term thrown around a lot, and sometimes I wish it was, to his earlier point, it actually needs to be qualified. Because if you're just like, oh, well, he needs to at least be making $100,000, it's like, okay, well, $100,000 in, I don't know, Arkansas is going to be a little bit different than $100,000 in San Francisco Bay Area. You know what I mean? Like it's going to get you a little farther. So to his earlier point, sometimes you got to do a deeper analysis. You can't just take things at face value. You know, we can throw on numbers and say, oh, well, it needs to just be like this, or it's invalid. And that's not always the case. There are certain situations where a person can be making $80K, you know what I mean? And they're living large because the cost of living is such that in that area, they're doing okay. And they're doing really, really, really well. And of course, this is for women who they're just looking at income. Now, I want to add this real quick. And also, in the meantime, if any of you guys other want to call in, I'm going to share this again. You are more than welcome to. Also, really quick, I do want to give a special shout out to Renzo Jones for that super chat. I wanted to, I didn't get a chance to read it off, but I wanted to thank you for it. I appreciate all the love and the support. If you were on here, by the way, please get those likes up. Please get those likes up. Tag anybody. Share it with anyone that you think may be interesting or find it interesting, as we are talking about our single and childless 40-year-olds bachelors winning. So I have shared the link. If any of you guys also have anything you'd like to share, any thoughts, perspective on this that maybe, you know, we have missed or you think is worth hearing. But like I said, you know, we got to take things into consideration. There's cost of living, obviously. There is the debt to income ratio. Again, if you're making $100,000 a year, great. If you're living in the Bay Area, okay, that's like cost of living. And then if you got, I don't know, $1,000 a month that's going just to school loans, then are you really winning? You know what I mean? So it's like all those different things versus somebody who's lives in like, I don't know, Little Rock, Arkansas, or like a small town in Kentucky, and they're making $100,000. The cost of living is a lot different. And it's like, yeah, okay, you're going to be in a whole lot better position than somebody living like a big city like New York or Chicago, where cost of living is super high. So those are all things to take into consideration when we're having throwing around these numbers. Now, I will say, this is just what I believe for women in general. I think if we are to just judge the value of a person or the value of a man in general based upon the money, I think that it's a very, very, very dangerous way of looking at it. It's an incredibly dangerous way of looking at it, because there's more to value than people than just their money they can make. And especially like men out there, like I've had conversations like this over and over again, where it's just like, okay, that's one metric, but that shouldn't be the primary metric. It should not be the primary metric. You have somebody that's hardworking, maybe has a good heart, has integrity, has character, is on his purpose, is at peace. That's so much more invaluable than somebody who was maybe money hungry, or all they want is just money, but maybe they're willing to lie and cheat and steal to get it, or maybe they don't have character. Or maybe you find out that they were doing a different illegal stuff, and now a few years into the relationship, now you're implicated in crime. Like, I think just saying, oh, he just needs to have money and that's it, that is a very, very, very one-dimensional flat analysis. And I think sometimes as ladies, we can do ourselves a disservice when we're just looking at the material and not understanding that when a person is really on their purpose and when a person really is following what God has called them to do, those things are taken care of. Oftentimes those resources are taken care of. And then secondly, again, if you really talk to women who have riches and wealth, or they just married men for their money, very few of those women are actually happy. If it was just about the money, if it was just about, okay, I can secure the bag, and they're just looking at this man like a walking wallet, usually they're not happy in their relationships. And then sometimes, there's women who they marry men, and it's like the man, he's so about trying to get the bag, about trying to bring home the bacon and the money. Now she's complaining because, oh, he doesn't have enough time to spend with me. Oh man, he's always on the phone because he has to take these calls. And oh man, we're on family vacation, he's on his computer. So there's different complaints. Now he's bringing home the money, but he's not around. He's not there for you. Now you wish that he just was spending time. Maybe you want less resources. You want more of his time. And so these are actual real conversations. I've talked to women who said, I would have much rather less things and more time with my husband. Or I would have much rather we spent more time building a healthy family versus accumulating assets or debt. And I'm like, that, again, when we just are when we're just so short-sighted and says, oh, he just needs to make this amount of money and it's going to be okay. Or, well, she just maybe just needs to look like this and it's going to be okay. Or whatever those kind of superficial standards are, we forget the fact that people have a lot of different, there are a lot of different quirks. And there are a lot of different complexities to just humans and relationships and how men and women interact. And like I said, if a man is bringing money, but he's not bringing, the emotional component, she wants to be emotionally satisfied, and then not the connection and not the attention. She's going to want your attention. She's not bringing any of those things. She's going to be discontent. Women, you're going to be discontent. And I think this is one of the reasons and one of the ways that, affairs and things happen. So again, these things, I think we can be really, really one-sided, sometimes just really short-sighted with what it means, and just say, oh, well, if it isn't hitting all these marks, then it's not worth it. And like I said, that's just not always the case. That is just not always the case. So I do want to give a special shout out to Joaquin for the 10 on the super chat. That is very much appreciated. I say it is good talking with you as always. Okay, let me see. What gets lost with people is debt equity along with accumulation of assets, demonstrates discipline and is good measure. And most divorces are filed because of finances. That is facts. That is absolute facts. Having monetary strain certainly does and can put a huge wedge and a lot of pressure on marriages. So, well, okay, I don't think I have anybody else calling in. So I'm going to wrap this up. This has been an interesting conversation, guys. I will say for this, everybody who called in, I think, hit on some really good points. The first caller, she mentioned how at the end of the day, most women are looking at it as, okay, if you're single, childless, over 40, as long as your pockets are deep enough, then you're still relevant in the conversation. Now, is that right? Is that wrong? That's a whole other thing. But at the end of the day, that's how most women are looking at it. But I think more importantly, as far as a man, his value, what defines winning, I think this is across the board, men and women. What defines winning is a person being on their purpose, especially a man being on his purpose, knowing what that is, knowing what God has told him to do and following that is more valuable than anything. That really is winning. And like I said, when a person is really on their purpose, right, they are operating in God's design for their life, then all those resources, those things are taken care of anyways. And I think that is so much more important than it having to be, okay, he's 40 plus or 45 plus, and therefore he needs to have at least $500,000 in the bank. Now, of course, all those things are important, and I think those are good and practical things to look at, especially when it comes down to, okay, if you want to marry somebody or if you want to settle down, you do need to look at finances. You do need to look at the debt and the income ratio. You do need to look at, those practical things. You look at the living situation, the job, like quality of life. You do need to take all those things into consideration. But I think it's so easy for us to kind of have these hard lines and say, unless you have what A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, then you're not valid, or you're not and you're just not a part of the conversation. And like I said, human beings are pretty dynamic and pretty diverse. And while there are certain principles and there are certain things that I think are universal, so much of the stuff I think is a lot more. How do I put it? I think I'm trying to just describe this in a way that makes some more sense. I think more than anything, a person being on their purpose and a person having a peace is a lot higher than, oh, they just have $500,000 in the bank. That's just me. So like I said, if a man is on his purpose, even if he's not a millionaire, you know what I mean, or has a couple $100,000, but he's on his purpose, to me that's a lot more valuable. Because even okay, I'm many of you guys know I'm a Christ follower, and I look at some of the different people, even the biblical narrative, right, that I'm looking up to. I mean, we look at the life of Jesus, right, or the parable of Jesus. He was broke by all intents and purposes. He was a dusty. Most women would not have married him. Jesus was a broke dusty that women would not have married. Historically, they described him as a short, hunchbacked gentleman with a patchy beard, dark skin, woolly hair. Like, this is a historical account of him. He was not attractive by any shape or form. And there's different scriptures that talks about him, you know what I mean, not even having a place to stay. So it's like he was on his purpose, doing what God called him to do. But for him, that meant that he had to forsake certainly worldly riches. Does that mean he doesn't have value? Of course, obviously, of course, he has value. If we look at that narrative, but maybe he wasn't getting all those worldly things or all those, monetary things, but that's because there was a higher purpose. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's one thing, we can look at the superficial stuff and say, oh, well, you have to have at least $500,000 here and that's it. Or, oh, she needs to be at least a size 2 or whatever, and that's it. And like I said, if a person wants to engage on that level and it's just going to be about the superficial stuff, then that's okay. You go for the guy that has $500,000. You better make sure you're a size 2 or size 4, and that's okay. That's fine. But if you see other things as more valuable, like peace of mind, maybe the intangibles, peace of mind, a person really having integrity, having a hard work ethic, having character, that being a lot more important than just, oh, I have a big house right now, but I have a lot of debt. Like, I think, and again, those are all the things that I think are a lot more important. I think the intangibles sometimes get overlooked. The intangibles, I think, are oftentimes overlooked, but those are the things that maintain a marriage. You having a lot of money is good and important to a certain extent. And yeah, you do want to have like a good financial plan. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but having a good financial plan, but having horrible communication in your marriage, or like I said, you're a woman and you're a liar, or you're with a man and he's a liar, or, you know what I mean? You guys are, you're treating each other bad. It's like, then the money doesn't matter. So you have to have the intangibles too. If you're gonna have the money and stuff, okay, but you have to have the tangibles too. You have to have the character. You have to have the peace. And for me, I think having a peace of mind is a lot higher, is a lot better than just going for the money. Because like I said, if you have peace and you're on your purpose, then generally those things follow you anyway. Generally, the money that you need to do whatever follows you anyways. But if you're just going after the money and it's at the expense of you having your peace, maybe doing what God has called you to do, then it doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't mean anything. But y'all, like I said, that's my thought on it. That's my thought on it. And I see his character also vital. I think character is underplayed, honestly. I think it's underplayed or undervalued. I don't want to say undervalued, but it's not talked about a lot. It's not talked about a lot. It is not, at least I can say, at least in femininity channels, I don't really see that being like a focal point. I see femininity being like, okay, makeup, hair, edges, and then just, walk around prissy. Like I've literally seen some channels where they're just like walking around like, oh, this is how feminine women walk. This is how feminine women sit. I'm just like, women, like, who acts like that, y'all? But anyway, so I've seen some of that kind of different stuff, but I'm like, nobody's talking about the fact that, okay, you can talk soft and you can walk whatever the way you're walking, but at the end of the day, if you're a liar or you're a manipulator, that's not going to keep you, boo. That's not going to keep you in a healthy relationship long term. It don't matter how good you walk. You know what I mean? Are you a nagger? Do you complain? Are you like, disrespectful? Like character stuff. So I think sometimes that's undervalued, underplayed. But yeah, those are just my perspective, my thoughts. So anyways, y'all, this has been fun. It's always fun to chat with you guys. I appreciate all of you who have called in, who have shown support. I have some fun stuff coming up over the next few weeks. Channel members get sneak peeks, so I'll clue you guys in, channel members. Also, total side note, if you guys are not aware, we are still a few weeks. We are a few weeks away before we hit the end of January. As you know, I am really excited and passionate about the Black Men Built That series, and basically continuing to get the message out there on the different things that are happening within the Black community. So I've had a few of you guys sign up and help support that, and I'm so excited, and I have a few things I'm working on currently to help get that message out there. And if you want to show support also, you can do so for as little as $4.99 and become a channel member, and also receive other behind the scenes perks and other things that I'm working on. So again, if that interests you, you can become a channel member for as little as $4.99. Other than that, stay tuned. I have some other stuff coming up this week, some other fun conversations, and I hope you guys can join me. So thanks all of you guys for being here tonight, and we'll talk later. Bye.